Whenever you want, I can start. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today's Applying Ethology webinar. Um, Before we start, just two things in terms of housekeeping rules. The first one is please make sure that your microphone and your camera are switched off to have the presentation run as smoothly as possible. And second, if you have a question for the speakers at the end of the presentation, you're fine to type them into the chat, or if you would like to, you can also raise your hand with a raise hand icon that you can find in the reactions folder or on the reactions icon on the bottom of the Zoom functions. And we will call you and you can ask your question online and live. With that, I'm incredibly happy to today present or today's speaker, Olivier Freyat. I hope I pronounced that correctly, and Marco Gamba. If you are analyzing or live coding animal videos or animal behavior, you at some point get probably in touch with software that helps you analyzing these videos and these behavior scorings. And if you're familiar with that, you at some point probably had heard the name Boris. Boris is an open source and free software that gives you a lot of options and a lot of functions to do exactly this, to analyze behavior of animals or analyze behavior and score behavior. And yeah, today we have basically the two masterminds behind Boris here with us in our webinar. And I'm looking very much forward to the tutorial and presentation about all the functions that Boris can offer us as animal behavior researchers. And with that, I'm giving the stage to Marco and Olivier.
Thank you so much, Christian, and thanks for inviting us and presenting some of the functions of Boris and some of the ideas behind Boris. Because we are online and we cannot exchange the podium as we usually do, most of the talking would be on me, but the real mastermind behind Boris is not me, it's Olivier that is with us. So at the end, if there is some question that I cannot answer, of course, he will be able to do that. So I will start with a short introduction about what is Boris and how Boris works. And so the idea behind Boris is something that is very common for everybody working with human and animal behavior. So the idea is that we need to develop methodologies that are describing and analyzing quantitative aspects of behavior. And we know that when we want to publish our results, whatever is the animal model we work on, we need to do better analysis, better workflow for the work we're gonna develop and we are developing. And at the same time, what has happened during the last 25 years, which is more or less my scientific career, is that we have a lot of new tools. We have new photo and video cameras, and the new photo and video cameras can store a large number of video recordings, and you can look at the animals even if you are not there. You can use remote video cameras or camera traps or those new devices in which you can collect information about behavior, and then after that you can analyze, and you have to analyze those data. So very very often the problem of tackling this kind of works was that you got to code something, or you got to spend a lot of money and buy software. And the idea that started in our minds when we developed Boris was to provide ourselves first, and then maybe some other, and it has revealed as an idea that was useful for many many people, something that they can use on very different computers, that they can provide to students. That was the problem at the very beginning. I remember very well the afternoon in which Olivier came to me and said, "Oh, Marco, we can develop something in Python which is useful for the students, because a lot of students is coming to me and they're saying, oh, my computer cannot use that software we paid a lot of money for. Do you have a computer to give me, because mine is not good enough to work with that other software," and stuff like that. And so the idea was to put together something that was easy of use, that was very flexible, so a lot of different young scientists and scientists working on very different species, very different problem, should be able to use Boris for their tasks. And also another thing that Olivier really worked a lot on was the idea to have a workflow. And Boris as part of that workflow. We never meant to have Boris as being the start and the end of an animal behavior or human behavior project, but the idea was to have the chance to develop something that was part of a workflow made possibly by other software and maybe some other free software. So availability. So Boris, as you all might know, is free. It's open source. You can download from our website. You can use with any of your tasks and any of your problems. You will not pay nothing for that. You will not pay a quid for that. Boris is available for different platforms, Windows, Linux, Chromebook, and also Apple. And we also have a Boris app, which is under development, and now we got only an alpha version for Android, which some way will enable people to use Boris on their mobile phones or on their tablets. We also tried, Olivier also put some time in using Boris on Raspberry Pi 4, and so and 400 as well. And so if some of you might have an interest in using Boris with this device, you may get in touch with us, and Olivier will be happy to provide you more information on that. So why open source? So the idea and the limitation of many other softwares were that when you use a particular software, I will not put the names on the table, but you all know the very expensive softwares that are around, is that you need the videos with a particular codec, we need the videos with a particular system, and you cannot use your software to analyze those videos. So the idea that Olivier developed immediately after the start of the project was to have VLC as a media player, and now we also have versions with other media players that we are working on at the moment, and we can use the FFmpeg multimedia framework. This is very important because this enables to use a lot of different formats. So imagine that in our minds, the problem is that we have hundreds of students interested in animal and human behavior every year enrolled at the University of Torino, and the problem was to provide them with a software they can use without providing them a particular computer, because we don't have the money to buy so many computers every year and to give them to the students. So the answer to all this was Boris. Software you can use on many platforms, it's free. You can use previously written code like VLC or FFmpeg or Matplotlib for visualization, which are already inside the software, and you can use that on any computer that your students are coming to you with. So who is using Boris? I mean, at the very beginning, we had something in our mind, and what has happened is that the real world exceeded a lot our expectation and our original ideas. So there's a lot of people using Boris in many different applications, from psychological studies, pet therapy, human-animal interactions, use of animals for particular tasks, for example, police using horses to go around the city to monitor what is happening. There is a lot of people using Boris for in situation in which there is a driving, there is behavior of people driving in particular situation. Of course, observing animals in humans, as I said before, also in pet therapy context, or in some cases observing animals in very particular situation, like comes attached to the carapax of turtles and stuff like that. And there's also a lot of people using Boris with insects, with small mammals, and recently there is a lot of people using Boris also in when scoring sports. And so we have really a lot of different applications. There are really extreme situations which I'm not describing at this stage, but there is a lot really going on, and we are very happy and very surprised from this. So what Boris does, for those that are not really confident with what is an event logging software, Boris records when you press a key on your keyboard, and that's the start of a particular behavior, and then when you press it again, it's the stop of that particular behavior. Of course, there is some variation onto this, but this is the basic idea. So Boris, of course, does event logging, and you can use Boris to do video and audio coding, and you can record the video audio position at which keys are pressed. And let's say the video or the audio is tracked constantly with the time in which you press the keys. So there's no need to stop the video and then press the key, or press the key and then stop the video. This happens automatically. And this is, of course, a difference with some software which were open source some years ago, but cannot integrate the two situations. And you can also do, as Christian mentioned before, live observations. There's quite a lot of people using Boris for live observation, and you can use your computer or your notebook to do live observation in front of your animals without recording the video. Of course, there are situations in which the video is very important, some others in which it's difficult to record, and it's up to the user to decide what they wanted to do. As I said before, and I want to stress this because for us this is really very important, Boris is part of an efficient flow. So we wanted to create an integration in between Boris and Beatrix, which is another software that Olivier, I, and some other colleagues developed over the last years, and then but also with Prot, and also producing data that can be opened and analyzed or visualized with Excel or with SPSS or with R. So we never meant Boris to be the start and the end of the project. We want the data from Boris to be available for other software and other analysis. Main features. So what you can do in Boris is to configure an unlimited number of subjects, an unlimited number of behaviors, an unlimited number of modifiers. So imagine a behavior is play, and you can play with a ball, which is a modifier, or with a stick, which is another modifier, or you can play with a crayon, which is another modifier. And you can also set an unlimited number of independent variables. What is an independent variable? We'll see this later, but it's something which remain constant over a particular observation. Like, for example, the number of tourists in a particular situation, the number of visitors in a zoo, the numbers of operators in a particular situation. And you can analyze within a project an unlimited number of observations, live or from media, as I said before. As we said, we wanted to use a very versatile media player, and VLC was the first choice. Now we are trying to use also other libraries, but I will leave this for questions if there is someone interested for that. And of course, we can coding the media files at different speed. So you can, I mean, it depends from the task you're working on. In some situation, we are interested in describing the behavior of a particular species in the different details. Some others, for example, are looking only at aggressive fights in between the animals. So if the animals are sleeping, there will be no aggressive fights. So you want to go very fast in your video, or you can go very fast in your video because there's nothing happening. And at some other time, you want to decrease the speed until 0.1 or 0.2 to see very well what is happening. But what you can do, and this is something that can be interesting for those, for example, working in face displays, you can also use a frame by frame mode. So you can go frame by frame in your observation to catch very tiny particular details and changes happening in your subject. You can use up to 8 media files synchronously played. So, for example, we started with the idea that there was a colleague of us working with cameras, looking at an aquarium from above and from the side view, and so you can use two in this situation, but you can also imagine, and we have several users doing that, that you might be in a situation in which somebody is driving in the car and you want to look at the face of this guy, at what it is looking at in the rearview mirrors, or what happens around the car. And so you might want to have many different cameras, up to 8. You can do that in Boris. Also for psychological experiments, this is very convenient because you can look, for example, at the stimulus, a monitor that provides a stimulus, and then at the same time you can look at the face of the guy participating to the experiment. You can encrypt the files, the media files for playing, and the event time, in the case you have many videos that are put in a queue, is that you can work on the cumulative time or not, and what happens across the cumulative time. And you can, at the end of all these, of your analysis, you can export the coded events as plain text files. And this is what we really want to do to ensure that you can use those files with R, with SPSS, with Excel, or with the other softwares you are used to for the data wrangling or the statistical analysis. So basically, maybe for those that are already experienced with behavioral analysis, this is going to be a very obvious point, but points toward the two main typical animal behavior or human behavior kind of results. So the time budget information, so how much time is invested by your animals in the particular behaviors. And on the other side, Boris can also be used to produce strings of behavior that can be used to build what is called a flow diagram, or for somebody a sociogram or something like that, depending on the aspects you want to focus on. Okay, so you got two different ideas here, and you can have them integrated in what you're doing in Boris, and then to export the data on one direction and the other direction. And again, on the main features, this is something that probably is not applying for those that are really into animal behavior or human behavior in the scientific approach, but there's a lot of people who is just maybe scoring some behaviors and needs to have a look at what happens, let's say in the large scale. We provide a time budget analysis and an events plot, we'll see later, and then you can also visualize a spectrogram and a waveform to look at the video, at the audio which is associated with your video. And you, as I said before, can export the data in various open formats for further analysis. Following some requests that we got a couple of years ago, maybe a bit more now, 4 or 5 years ago. There is also the chance to do geometric measurements and also to put markers when you use the frame-by-frame mode. So there are a number of things you can put on your video while using Boris if you want to put a sort of a signpost in a particular point or another particular point. What Boris is not is that it's not an automatic video analysis system. So if you're looking for something which is sort of a magic thing, it's not Boris. And there's no interface with live recording system. So you got to choose whether you want to do the live observation or you record your video and then use the recorded video in Boris. You cannot interface through a video camera or any other kind of recording and using Boris while the camera is recording. This is something that at this stage we cannot do with Boris. But remember, it's free and open source. It's not only something that you get for free. It's also something that is open source, and you can fork it and add your functions. And somebody really did it very successfully, and we were very impressed. And it's very easy to impress me, but impressing Olivier is much more difficult in terms of scripting. And there is somebody that really customized Boris for their own research needs in a brilliant way. So before I get a bit more into the details, there is some final note of this introduction. So there is an official website, which is this one. You don't need to write it down, or if you don't know it, you will have it in the slides that I will share with Christian and the other colleagues later on. And there is some videos on YouTube. There are some videos on YouTube where you can get some tutorial and some presentation. And of course, there is the source code and the issue tracker that you can find on GitHub under Olivier's page. And there is a paper. This is the user guide, and there is also a paper that we published in 2016 in Methods in Ecology and Evolution, and it was very successful in terms of citations, 630 citations last week. And now I will get a bit more into the details for those that are not experienced with Boris. And so this is the idea of Boris. You got a video in the middle, for example, and there is a media that you want to log on. And what happens is that you got a focal subject, and when you decided to have a focal subject and define this, you will see in a second how to define subjects in a short while. You can define subjects before you start your coding, and when you are defining your subjects, then if you press the key associated with the subject, the name of your subject will come over here, but you of course can move this in other position in your screen. And also, when there is a particular behavior is activated, you will see the behavior which is going on at the moment, just to be sure that what you're doing is what you meant to do and not happen by chance. Then you have a toolbar with all the different usual buttons over here. You can play, pause, go fast forward or rewind your video and start again from the beginning. You can decrease, increase the speed or go back to 1:1, and then you can take a snapshot and you can go frame by frame. And from this event log, you see this is simply the list of behaviors that has been coded for this particular video at this stage. And you see for different individuals, you see the start and the stop of the different behaviors. And we'll come to more details in a short while. There is also the situation in which you have different cameras. As I mentioned before, a lot of people is using Boris for driving driving behaviors, to study driving behaviors. And here, for example, you see what the driver can see on one side and the other side, one mirror, the other mirror. And you can see the three media together. They can be synchronized. You can also set an offset to be sure that you can synchronize your videos and have them going on at the same time in the same moment. It's very important. I will come back to this later, but it's very important if you use more than a monitor and you have maybe 2 or 3 monitors. Of course, you can undock the different windows you see here. You can put them on one monitor or another, or keep on your computer and an extra monitor the video. You decide whatever you can do that with Boris. You can also do the live observation. The view with the live observation will have no media, of course, but you can have your subjects and your behaviors that you set before, and you can look at the time going on since the start of your observation, and that timing will be bound to your coding for the different behaviors of the different subjects you are looking at. And then when you want to stop, you stop your live observation over here. As I said before, there is the perspective to have a Boris app, and in the perspective of the Boris app, we also developed the coding pads. So you can have coding pads if, for example, you have a touchpad computer or a touchpad notebook. You can touch on the screen and use the different previously selected buttons that are selected by the user, are put together by the user. You can just set your behaviors, and the system will provide you with a coding pad, and you just need to tap on the different coding pad that you want to set the start or the end of a particular behavior, and then the subjects with the same idea. Okay? So let's move to probably to one of the most important pillars when you want to start an animal behavior project, and this pillar is probably the ethogram. So the ethogram is something which is very customizable for any of us. If I set it for you, somebody will say, it's not what I want, and some other will say, it's completely different from what I wanted. So good. With Boris, you can do from scratch. So there's nothing that comes with the software. You can create these lines, and you can decide whether you have states or point events. So state event is a state, point event is a point event, and also depends on the kind of approach you want to use to your coding. You can define a key. As you can see, keys can be capitals or non-capitals, and you can have more than a key for different behavior. We'll come to this in a second. And then you have a code for your behavior. The code must be unique. So one behavior, one code. One behavior or two behaviors may have the same key associated with them. We usually suggest to have a description, and we can also set categories. So you can have categories for the different behaviors you want to set before you start with your study. And then you might also have modifiers. I already put an example of modifiers before, so I will not tell it again. And you can also set exclusions. What is an exclusion? It means that when my animal is running, it will be, or it will not be sleeping. Okay, so I want to tell Boris that when I press W for walking and I press S for sleeping, that S will automatically stop W, right? So this is what we call a mutual exclusion, and you can set with a small table that I'm going to show you in a second, this exclusion table. So this is the story. If you want to do a mutual exclusion with some behaviors against this is what you will get. You can also add, as I said before, behavioral categories. So when you start your project, you can decide the categories and then associate the different behaviors with those categories. why you can add more than a key to different behaviors. Because, for example, in some situation it's difficult to decide immediately what's happening. Let me give you an example. I work a lot with vocalizations, and most of you, if you know me, probably know me because of my bioacoustic studies. So the idea is maybe when my students are working on sounds and are scoring behaviors together with listening to vocalizations, they might need some time to decide whether a vocalization is one or another. No problem. They can associate, for example, V with with different vocalizations, and then when I press V on my keyboard, Boris will ask me, okay, I have a lot of things associated with V. Which one do you really want to attach to this particular behavior you're looking at? And so you can choose later on the one you really want to associate, okay? So you imagine I associate scream. When you press scream, Boris will go back to your video and start again playing back your video, right? So there is this sort of automatic interaction, which is very convenient when you do a larger scale project. So time is flying, so let me just introduce you to modifiers. You may have different types of modifiers. This is very common for all of us. For example, imagine objects that your animals are interacting with, but you can also have a modifier. For example, if you're coding a social play situation, you can automatically move your list of subjects into the modifiers. So you can say, for example, that the animal Nina is playing with animal Sharky, okay? And you can set this as a modifier, okay? So when you want to look at what Nina does, you can stop to the fact that Nina was playing at some point. But if you want to concentrate on who is playing Nina with, you can bring up the modifier and see how many times Nina spent playing with Imal or Sharky or another one. Okay, you can also use coding maps. So for those working, for example, in a captive or farm situation, this is a very common feature. So you can upload an image of a particular area. Imagine, for example, an enclosure in a zoo. This is an enclosure in which I think our student was working with, was observing okapis, and you have different areas of the zoo, and in these different areas that you can then define with the different areas of different colors, you can click to associate the area with a particular behavior. So for example, when you have a behavior coding map, you can set that I click on a particular behavior which is associated with the map is coming out, and you can click OK, red area, this is where this behavior happened. And then at the end of the project, you can track where the different behaviors were performed by your animals, okay? There are other situations. This is a very basic map that we developed many years ago for a project based on facial expressions. And this is another situation that we use a lot for the students when we do the long training we are used to do with our students. So you can set the different areas on a tennis table and you can just track where the ball is going and which is the action performed by the players. And so this is of course a kind of an example you can think about when you want to develop your own situation. Let me mention the subjects. So you can add the subjects, an unlimited number of subjects in the same way you add behaviors. So you decide who are the subjects, and we also suggest usually to provide some information about the different subjects, because what you can do later on is to import the subjects and the heterogram into a new Boris project. And for example, I think many of us are probably instructors. You have a student, the student did a great work, and then another student need to start from scratch because there's no chance to import or export the information that the previous student worked on or that ourselves worked on. And so in this case, you can use a project in Boris to import into another project all information regarding behaviors, different states, different point events, and the different subjects. So this is very convenient, and then also the new student will have a description of the animals that he has to look at. Let me say something about this, because in many situations we can look at the big picture, but then if you want to understand very well what the different subjects are doing, you've got to concentrate on the different subjects one by one. And so, of course, any of us has a different approach on this. So maybe in some situation it's easier to look at this one for half an hour and then to go back from the beginning and do an half an hour of observation on the other one, and then the third one, and then the fourth one. And in other situation, in other studies, depending on the kind of tracking you are doing, maybe it's easier to do, oh, this did this and this other did another thing. So maybe you're looking more on the action reaction kind of framework. So you can do the two of these when you're working with Boris. It is up to you to decide which is the best one for you. You can one animal to another, subject to another, if you want to do this one by one and set the behavior of one and then the other, or you can do one until the end, then you go back and you do the other one. The timing of the two will be tracked together in your final list of behaviors. So when one is doing something, then there will be the precise time you pressed your key on the keyboard, and when the other one, even if you do this later, will come in between the previous subject. Just to be clear of the different kinds of approach you may use, and also the different kind of approach are very much mirrored in the different situation we might imagine to look at. Sometimes you want to look at a parallel kind of situation, and some others, as I said before, action reaction. I think we have only time to look at something about observation. So observation is a part of a project, is not necessarily a single video, but it's, for example, a single day or a single session in which you are observing your animal. So you can put the notes over here. You can set your independent variables, the location, the weather, and before you go into selecting when you set these, you can also set the kind of values that you're gonna have here. You might want to set a particular position that you previously measured. You might want to set a particular value from a set, like sunny, cloudy, rainy, or whatever that you set before, so your student cannot be very creative and must really stick with what you want to have as a value. And then you can go to temperature and number of visitors, where you put down the numbers of a particular situation. So I'm just giving an example, of course. And then here, the media. So when you want to have a single player, you will add your media, over here. And it's very important to remember, this is something we stress when we are teaching how to use Boris. When you start a project, Boris will remember the position of your media. So if you think you will record for 2 years your animals and you have a notebook with a 500 gigabytes hard disk, maybe start thinking that the place where you will have your video at the end, your videos at the end, is an external hard disk, an external hard drive. And so start by putting everything on that hard drive. So when you create the project, you can immediately point Boris to look at the hard drive and find the videos, and will keep the position where the videos are. If you move the video, Boris will not be able to find the videos again by changing the position. You can change the position, but of course it's not that easy. It's better to think very well at the beginning what you want to do. So the last minutes, some tools. So let me just show you some of the tools we have. This is a sort of a list of the different observations that you have. You can filter the observation by the animal, the subjects. In this case, there are animals. The description, you can set the date, but you can also set, for example, the occurrence of a particular behaviors, and you can choose which of the observation were showing particular behaviors. And so, for example, here, description contains in the pool. And so you can only quantify something over these ones. Then, as I said before, you may have a geometric measurement, you may have a spectrogram. You may also have external information. In this case, was a profundimeter, a depth sensor that was attached to this turtle, and was the information coming from the depth sensor was put together with the behavior of the feeding behavior of the animal. And this is something in Boris you can do if you are using a standardized kind of data entry from your sensor or your temperature measurement, for example, and stuff like that. I already mentioned the coding pad, and I think I mentioned the fact that you can undock your widgets. Let me also mention that you can, of course, go wrong. This is when you work at 11 p.m. because you want to finish your data for the thesis or for the congress or something like that. This happens to everybody. Sometimes happens still when, even if we are getting of age. But you want to edit something wrong you have done. No problem. You can edit a select. You can change whatever you want. If you are wrong with the animal, you can change the name of the animal, the start, the stop, and everything else. Okay, so of course, if there's some mistake, you can go back there. And I want to show you the fact that you can get a time budget at a glance, which is something that, of course, you can do in R, or you can do in SPSS or any other software you're used to. But in some of the users are all the fact that they have some kind of analysis to do bad categories if you're using behavior categories, or also providing a sort of a different kind of visualization of the time budget that you can export from a text file to a spreadsheet software. And you can also produce within Boris a sort of a plot from that time budget. Like this, you got the duration of the different behaviors and the number of occurrences. And you can plot the events. Sometimes users are really looking at the fact that they are not have overlaps maybe, or some of the behaviors, that they want to have an overview at what happens. And of course, you can have an overview with this plot of the events with the different animals and the different behaviors, and you can spot mistake to correct before exporting the data for final analysis. And of course, you can also filter events, as I said before. So you can set, okay, I want to focus on Nautilus and is alert behavior, and then Himal and resting behavior, and something like that. I think we don't have time for more than this. As I mentioned before, we are used to give much longer a sort of hands-on experience during our Boris Day at the University of Torino. But in case some of you is interested in this, you can join us for our free public days at the University of Torino, or in the case there is some more online training over long times, we can experience that together. If you have a question later on, not now, you can write to Olivier and me. It's the best if you copy your question to the two of us, but Olivier will reply. I reply less often because I'm lazy. And this is our website, and please do not hesitate to give Boris a try and give us your feedback. And thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you both for the presentation and for all your hard work referring to making Boris a pleasant and convenient experience as it gets for this kind of software. We're happy to take questions, and we already have a first from Seun. She's asking whether it's possible to merge 2 or more videos in Boris itself, whether this can be done.
Yeah, maybe Olivier, do you want to answer, or it's you prefer?
Yes, if you mean concatenating 2 or more videos or merging together.
Yeah, when you say merging, looks like you want to analyze them one after another. So if this is what you want to do, of course you can do this in Boris. If you are referring to the real video, of course you not merge the video file, because the idea is that Boris works on your files, is not modifying your files. You know. Because
Yeah, Son,
we are not looking at that.
So yeah, just ask your question whether this was the right explanation or interpretation.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I was just wondering, because there are times when you have to take a recording every 1 hour, so on different days, and you want to match, the 1 hour recording on a particular day, it's another 1 hour or recording from another day. Is it possible to put these 2 videos together while you're watching using phones? And secondly,
Son, give me a second. I think the connection is really the connection is really bad. Do you have any chance to improve your microphone connection? Because at least for me, I could barely understand what you were asking.
Hello, is it better now?
Yes, this is way better.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what I'm saying, for instance, if you have to record maybe 3 a particular observation 3 times in a week, maybe for 1 hour per day. So, and you want to watch maybe the first hour of recording for each day, can you bring them together in Boris so that you have a stretch of like 3 hours video? Or do you have to watch it in bits as you have recorded them?
Yeah, of course. This is sorry, maybe I'm here, but this is the idea of enqueuing the different videos, right? So you might have different videos one after another, and you can have them part of the same observation. Or if you want to split them into different observations, you can still analyze them within the same project. So you can record how many times you want per week and keep 1 observation for each of your video. Or maybe there is a day in which instead of doing a video of an hour, you want to do 2 videos of half an hour, and you want to consider them together. So you put them as part of the same observation, right? This can be an idea. I think this answers what you are asking. Yeah.
Yes. Secondly, the second question.
Okay.
Again, this problem with the connection, Son.
Okay, but I think this was she was asking. Yeah.
Is it better
Okay,
now?
then can I take over some of the questions that I see in the chat, Christian?
Yeah, sure. I can read them out. I think Luis was next. He has his hand
Okay, good.
raised, and it's you can ask him if you want, Luis.
Okay, thank you. I have written them down, but I can do it over the voice. I wanted to ask first, thanks for all your efforts on doing this piece of software that helped me a lot in my projects, and it's wonderful. And the question is, what are the latest developments in Doris project? And a second question, if we have time, are there any projections to have another subject as a modifier for an event? For example, if we have one subject doing something to another.
Can you hear me? I cannot hear you, but I got the question, right?
Okay.
Can I answer, Christian?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can
Sorry
you hear
about
me now?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay, so thank you, Luis, for your questions. So about the Doris project, I haven't mentioned Doris, which is another software that Olivier and I try to put together. So you can see Beatrix and Doris that are other interesting piece of software and some way very well interacting with what is Boris doing on the www.boris.unito.it, and please check him out. Of course, there is some development, but maybe Olivier wants to say something about this later. And the second question you were asking, I think I mentioned that in the presentation. You can have a subject as a modifier of the interaction in Boris. I don't know if you are asking this about Boris or Doris, but if you're asking about this in Boris, definitely you can do that. And there is an automatically as a subjects in the modifier list. Okay.
Thanks.
Olivier, do you want to answer about Doris?
Yeah, about Doris or Boris?
Doris.
Okay, Doris.
D.
Yeah, D. Actually, the Doris project is paused. I'm not working actively on it. Did you try it, Luis?
We cannot hear you. At least I cannot hear you, Olivier. So the idea is that we are making some development, but it's not public. But at this stage, we are thinking about really putting this out. Okay, so this will require some time, maybe to have but you worked with Doris. Or not, there was some development not so far time ago. So there might be something over there. Other questions?
Thanks, Marco. There's another one from Son. She's asking, she mentioned the app already. She's asking whether we can use Boris on the smartphone now. I remember you said there is an app for Android. Can you tell us a little bit about the functionality of this app, maybe?
Maybe Olivier wants to do that. Olivier,
yes.
Do that. If you can hear us.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. No, the Boris app
go.
is only for Android. I'm working again on this project, but you can now download an alpha version. So it's only for live observation. And you can code your observation using the touch screen, okay? Like the coding pad in the desktop version. You can check on the Boris side, there is some screenshot of the app.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I remember that one of our students has used this app previously, and it looked really cool on the tablet and quite intuitive when she was using it. So yeah, I think many of us are looking forward to more developments regarding the app as well.
Okay. Feel free to send us your suggestion.
Thank you. Camille has another question. She's first of all saying that it was a really nice presentation, and she's asking whether it's possible to compare within Boris the observations of two different observers. I assume she's referring to inter-observer reliability, whether this is possible in Boris as well.
Yeah, there was something about that. There was also someone suggesting some changes on what was the first approach we put in the software. Yeah, I mean there is some chance to do inter-observer reliability test within Boris by comparing two different projects. It also depends a lot on what you have to do, because if you have to do something related with the quality of the coding, like for example whether a student was correct or not in coding a particular behavior, so the quality of the behavior, the name, resting or sleeping or monitoring, okay, if this is the point, it is also very useful to use another software we've done, which is Beatrix. But you can also do that within Boris. If you are more interested in checking the timing of the coding, you can do that easily in Boris.
Thanks, Marco. And as soon as someone
Pia is asking for a phone version, and this is not happening soon. Okay, so there's no plan in the short time to have an iPhone version for several reasons, and I will not get into that, but iPhone versions are at the moment not in the closed site. And yeah, this is one of the point, the one asking by Jimena. So you can import from Doris from Boris desktop to Boris up, yes, but we are thinking about that. Which is the best way to do that? We have some ideas, and if you look at the app, you will get some hint about the perspective we try to move on. There's no max. I answered the other question. There's no maximum duration if your computer can handle with its memory the use of Boris. But if your computer is not strong enough to handle a very long video, then Boris will not be able to work with a very long video. This depends a lot with the, let's say, performance of your computer sound. It's not really related with the limits of Boris, okay? Yeah. Thanks, Luis. 24 hours files is a good idea of the limit. Yeah, if you want to go over 24 hours, it's difficult. Yeah. Yeah. Oluwazion is asking what happens to a behavioral parameter that had no data. It's up to you. You can extract this as a 0, or you can avoid it from your extraction. You want to extract or what you ignore during the extraction of the behaviors. If I got it right, what is your question? And of course, you can exactly do what you suggest later. You can have the data file showing NA for some of the behaviors, or you can avoid having those behaviors in the output. Yes, Jeanette is asking about audio analysis and sound analysis. So what we do usually is to export the information about sounds using the text grids. So if you are, I see you are familiar with Pratt, what you can do is to select the start and the end of each presentation, sorry, of each vocalization in Boris, and then you will extract your coding as a Pratt text grid. Of course, when you have that information in Pratt, it will be easy to ask Pratt to extract all those calls that are named, I don't know, screams or vocalizations in general, and get the small audio files from Pratt cut starting.
We've lost Marco,
Yeah.
I think. There is some movement in his
Okay,
video.
that's good.
Marco, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. I wasn't sure whether the connection was cut off completely right now.
Okay.
You went
Stop my share.
no, you went full maximum efficiency by just answering the questions yourself from the chat, which is probably the best suited approach for a late hour that we have here already. We just hit 9 o'clock, and I think this is the best time to wrap up the webinar. If you, Marco mentioned it, if you have any further questions, drop Marco or Olivier, or both of them, an email regarding how to use Boris, which interactions or which formats might be used best, and whether you would like to see any new functionality or find any bugs in the software for that. And yeah, with that, I just wanted to say again, thank you to both of you for this really great presentation. Go through the software. I expect that there will be a few more Boris downloads over the next minutes or next hours or next days. And thank you so much for for joining us here at the webinar. I just wanted to say briefly that we will have the next webinar on October the 4th. It will be by Maria Chen, and she will be talking about workers' perception of animal welfare on two dairy farms in China. So if you're interested in this topic, feel free to join our webinar the next time in October the 4th. And with that, thanks again, Olivier, Marco, for this great presentation. And I say goodbye.